All right, well, welcome everyone to a rare Monday session. It is getting to be the end of legislative year. Just House Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs. We're starting this session before floor to take a look at the Senate proposal of amendment to H-42. And Mr. Devlin, could you introduce yourself and tell us what the Senate did with our bill?
Of course. Thank you very much for having me, Mr. Chair. Again, for the record, my name is Tim Devlin, Legislative Counsel. So in the Senate's version of H-420-482, there are only two fairly characterized as minor changes. One is in Section 3, which is the part of the bill regarding the report back on fair and impartial policing training, which adds the following sentence. You can find this on page 3 on line 4. The report shall describe how competency is being measured in fair and impartial policing practices and include precise metrics.
And would it be fair to say that the Senate proposal of amendment and the Gov.Ops committee amendment, those two documents that are posted, the Gov.Ops committee amendment has the highlight, so that's the easier one to read?
Yes, yes.
Guiding the committee. So you're looking at H-482. I just confirmed with Tim that the language in the proposal of amendment is identical language to the committee's draft 2.1 proposal of amendment, but in that draft, you can see the highlights. So it highlights.
Draft 1.2 is the same.
1.2 or 2.1?
1.2.
Okay, thanks.
So it's the same.
So page 2, Tim? Sorry.
Top of page 3, is that where the first changes?
Yeah.
Okay,
Top of
thanks.
So that's the more substantive change. And then I think what could maybe be called close to like a technical correction is at the top of page 4 at 1.2, which removes a prior date that maybe should have been part of session law prior. And this is for section 5 regarding road stop data collection, which would amend Title 20 VSA section 2366. And since that date has already passed, when those municipal law enforcement agencies have to start collecting this data, it's Senate, I believe, just thought better to replace it with just every there. So taking out that past date.
Thank you. Just a quick question, Tim, remind me, please, and I think this is one of the things I objected to about the original bill is that we didn't really know how competency could be measured. Is that correct? So the Senate delved into that a little bit and decided that they wanted this report to talk about how to measure competency?
They are advocating to that now. They insisted on some more specifics being reported back. And so that's why they have the precise metrics and preface with a request for describing how the competency would be measured.
Thank you.
Questions for Tim about the words on the page?
So just two changes.
Yeah, so some more specificity on the report and then a little cleanup language that it's just not sure how we overlooked that when we were looking at this. I guess because we were focused on the time and location of the stop because that was the main part. But then that part at the top around 2015 is kind of long gone by. But for the reporter, Representative Waters Evans, one other thing you might mention is that while this is a strike all, the two changes aren't huge. Because I think the fact that it's a strike all amendment that's coming over from the Senate might lead somebody to believe that there was a big substantive policy change. Representative Hank.
Quick question for anybody who remembers our discussion on this. Do I recall hearing that from someone, perhaps Commissioner Morrison or someone from the BCJC, saying that they would be ready to implement whatever needs to be done to shift from hours-based to competency-based as soon as that was decided on?
I think it's more that they were saying that they're already doing the shift and that we're in this bill essentially endorsing what's already slowly started to happen anyway. And as they do this 3-year plan that we, said, yeah, the first tranche of money in the budget to open up flexibility around how you get certification, that it will even more become about competency because the national law enforcement training and international law enforcement training organizations are all moving away from you got to spend this much time looking at a screen or in front of an instructor toward a skills-based or competency-based approach. So it wasn't like a date certain when they're switching. It's more that there's a process that we're essentially endorsing with this bill.
Thank you. And I think that was one of the things I really objected to was I didn't know how it was going to take place or how it was going to be determined if what was taking place was successful or not. And it seems like if they're needing to include precise metrics, then that makes me feel a little bit better.
And we'll be here in January to hold them accountable, right?
Right.
I expect tough questions from you when they bring us back this report.
Oh, by then I'm sure we'll have other things.
I think that this law enforcement training modernization though is a place where we can really. I'm kind of excited about the direction they're going. I think it's going to help a lot of our police agencies actually get more people interested in being law enforcement officers. Any other questions or thoughts? Discussion about these changes seem pretty minor actually. I love it when the Senate just gives us a little polish. Well, then I guess we should take this is actually the first time I think we've had a bill back that we are interested in concurring with a proposal of amendment. So I believe we don't take a record of action. We're just going to do a straw poll. So all those in favor of concurring with the Senate proposal of amendment? We're going to, you're good? Okay, so that's right. That's great. Any opposed?
Could use my leg.
All right, so that's a 12-0. So you can say on a straw poll of 12-0 would be the body to concur with the Senate proposal of amendment on 482. Now we're running on time. So great. Well, Tim, thank you very much for your help. And is Maria going to join us at 12:45? We're like 30 seconds early here. So I'll just table set here. So over the weekend, I want to thank Representative Harrison and Maria for taking various ideas that had come up in conversations in here and were happening between the conferees on the budget and trying to polish up the draft dispatch language that we had looked at, thinking about the membership on that task force and some of the conditions around which money would be released and the financing change that our Ways and Means colleagues had asked us to just tweak that language a little bit. And now just on time. Are you out of breath, Jimmy? Thanks for joining us. All right, so committee, I think this latest draft is 1.3. Am I right on the drafts?
Yep.
Yeah. Introduce yourself and tell us about the changes in this new draft of the dispatch language, please.
Great. Rita Royal, Legislative Council. It's draft 1.3 and hopefully reflects some of the concerns that were raised last week. And all of the revisions are highlighted in yellow. So that will help direct us. So the first change is on page 2, line 8. Just changing municipal officer to municipal official. And address, make sure it's not law enforcement officer, but then on line 15 of that page, this is the membership of the task force. 1 firefighter appointed by the Vermont State Firefighters Association. So not the career firefighters, that was a suggestion that came in. Another suggestion on page 3, lines 3 and 4, you discuss the per diem for non-state employees on the task force. And the proposal here is to provide a per diem in the amount of $150 for each day spent in the performance of their duties. And on page 4, line 5, so this is the subdivision that relates to the task force being able to draw upon the expertise and information maintained by other state agencies. And a bunch of them are listed, and added to that list is now the 911 board and the Department of Public Safety. On page 5, with respect to the data collection and analysis, on line 15, removing the phrase "to the extent feasible." This concerns mapping the communications dead zones in the state where there isn't coverage. So just being a little more specific that identification should have the resources provided. And then just clarifying on line 18, taking into consideration all cell towers, including those that are part of FirstNet. Before, it could have been read to just limit the FirstNet cell towers, which are public safety cell phone towers. Page 6, the bottom of the page, line 21, just that was a correction of an error that I made in the year. So the final design is due December 15th, 2024, not 25. Then on page 8, line 3, just rewording a little bit, the options for sustainably and equitably structuring the financing of public safety.
Representative Kornheiser's work right there.
Yep. And then the bottom of that page, line 16, this is regarding the pilot projects. I'll read through it really fast. One of the issues had to do with priorities for funding. So that's really what's addressed here. But the task force if the task force determines that sufficient minimum technical and operational standards have been developed to warrant the funding of one or more pilot projects, the task force may submit for approval a pilot project plan to the Joint Fiscal Committee in calendar year 2023. Pilot projects eligible for funding under this subsection may include new regional dispatch centers or expanded capacity at existing regional dispatch centers, provided the task force determines the pilot demonstrates project readiness and is otherwise consistent with the standards and purposes of this section. And then 3 gets to the priorities. In evaluating proposed pilot projects, the task force shall give a high priority to projects in geographical areas of the state that presently face significant challenges with respect to reliably providing dispatch service. And then with respect to the overall pilot project plan, shall include a description of each proposed project, the resources needed, and an explanation of how the project will align with, inform, and further the development of a statewide public safety communication system and ensure transparency and accountability, particularly with respect to the expenditure of state funds pursuant to this subsection. And then 5 is just the amount appropriated in total, $4.5 million.
And that amount hasn't changed. It's just
No, it's all just moved out. Same amount there. Line 18 is just asking for a status report of any of those pilot projects, and that you would get that next January. And then page 10, the final design plan is due December 15th, 2024. This is just a requirement to make sure that that plan is submitted to the legislative committees on or before that date, which wasn't in the last draft, and that's it. Those are all the changes.
If they develop a plan and then keep it to themselves.
I know.
Problematic.
That would be.
Thank you. Sure. All right. Any questions about this new draft of our dispatch language? Representative Fiegler.
So I'm looking at the makeup of the task force, 7 members. I can only see one individual that's a state employee or a state employed by the state, unless I'm wrong. So that would mean 6 others. And I guess I just been curious as to where $150 came, I mean, we talked about $50 is the average for most of them now. And, that's something we're going to be looking at, in the future, I hope. But again, just curious as to where $150 came from.
We tried to tag it to a board that had kind of similar need for professional expertise and longer meetings, where you'd be, doing whole work days instead of just doing a 1-hour meeting, which we envision this would have to do. And that's I believe the Labor Relations Board. The Labor Board has that per diem. Anybody else? A lot of good work here. Representative Harrison, do you want to chime in on any of this?
No, I love it.
You're like, I'm ready to dispense with this language.
I am ready unless there are any last minute tweaks the committee has. I think we've been back and forth collectively on this few days now, plus, and I think the conferees are getting towards the end, and hopefully they can agree to something like what's included here. Otherwise, we'll.
We're going to have our work cut out for us on continuing to respond and tweak and bird dog some of this, I think, because there are so many different ways of pulling in different directions here. I think we've done our best in the limited time we've had to try to address some of the concerns that were raised. And I'll be the first to admit that this is not perfect, but I think it's a good step in the direction that we want to go. There's some significant policy development that's going to need to happen when we get back here in order to push things forward into a future where we've got a complete statewide interoperable system. Standing up consultant, getting these folks on a couple of these interoperable pilot projects will be, please show us how we should be doing more of it in the future. All right. So committee, can we endorse this language and let the conferees know we're all right with this? Anybody in opposition? I know that there are still concerns in the room.
Can they be heard?
So, Mr. Whitaker, we have had a number of conversations. I think at this point, we're ready to move this particular language along. And I really appreciate your having shared the concern with me. I think one of the biggest ones being about how are we going to develop that policy that I was just referring to. And I think there's consensus among me and the conferees that policy work really needs to get done when we get back here next year. I also think the concern around the universal cell phone sort of doing a complete inventory has been addressed in this draft by making sure that it's not just the FirstNet, that we're looking at all of the cellular and LMR coverage. But we will continue talking, I promise. All right. Any last concerns before we give our word over to conferees? All right, Mr. Harrison. Tell them we're ready. Thank you. All right. I'll give everybody a few minutes to get up to the floor. So, committee, it's my understanding that the speaker will be, we'll take up a few bills. There'll be a break. There's a draft amendment for S39 that folks should take a look at. And we'll look at Senate language on 127. Yes. Sorry.
Quick question, since I wasn't here on Friday, I understood from a text message that S39 went away.
We did not take it up. It went off the agenda on Friday. We waited for you, Representative Hagan,
Great,
to do any more work.
okay, yeah, I guess I misunderstood that because I thought, because then I looked at the agenda for this week and I didn't see anything, so I thought it.
If,
Gone somewhere, I
one of
don't
the
know
things
where.
we had just talked about as I was talking about why it came off the agenda was that the Senate had put in that the healthcare would be effective in 2024. And that has not only some budget implication, but it also, we discovered, thanks to our colleagues in healthcare and Mike Fisher at the Office of the Healthcare Advocate, that could inadvertently have put folks who get a subsidy on the exchange in a pretty bad financial position that are members who have kind of a moderate income level and depend on the subsidy of the exchange. They could have their healthcare costs increase pretty significantly. So we decided to punt on that piece and I'm presenting an amendment that we'll talk about that tries to resolve that issue.
Thank you.
But that was the reason why there was kind of a, we're going to take this up again. Oh, wait, no, we should probably try to look at this issue a little further. And I want to thank Representative Houghton for thoughtfully flagging that concern for us. Great.